They said I had nothing left. They called it fairness. I called it a funeral with open eyes. He smiled when they read his name, and I watched my history being handed away like a napkin at a cheap restaurant. They told me not to make a scene. I didn't. I just watched the last thread of my father's love unravel without a sound. I didn't cry.
Not then.
Not when the will ended. Not even when my brother shook the lawyer's hand like a conqueror claiming land. It wasn't about the money. It was about being remembered. It was about hearing your name read by the only man who ever believed in you, one last time.
And I wasn't mentioned.
Not once. My name is Rachel Quinn. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Boulder, Colorado. And what nobody knew that day was that my father had written a second letter. And that letter was about to change everything. I wasn't born into a broken family. We had tradition, structure, expectations polished like the silverware we only used at Thanksgiving. In our house, everything had a place, and everyone had a role. My brother, Ethan Quinn, was the achiever, the straight-A student, quarterback, the one who gave speeches at award nights and made our parents beam with the kind of pride that filled rooms. And me? I was the artist. The sketchbook in the backyard kind. The daydreamer. The girl who cried at movie trailers and wrote poems on napkins. Dad used to call me his gentle storm. Growing up, I believed that was enough. I went to college for English Lit, not business like Ethan. I volunteered at shelters. I interned at a tiny nonprofit that worked with women transitioning out of prison. I was doing something, but it didn't come with a salary or a corner office. Ethan graduated and walked straight into Quinn Industries, my father's real estate development firm.
Me?
I stayed in Portland and picked up freelance editing work. That's when things started changing. The phone calls got shorter. Family dinners became scheduled events I was often looped in on at the last minute. And my mother, always polite, started calling me idealistic.
Not in a good way.
I remember the last Christmas we were all together. Dad tried to include me in a conversation about quarterly projections. Ethan cut in. She doesn't care about that stuff, Dad. She's saving the world, remember? Everyone laughed. I smiled. Quietly. 2 months later, Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. No warning. No chance to fix what had started unraveling. I moved back home to Boulder to help. Ethan was busy managing the company and steering the ship. But I was the one who made the soup, changed the bedsheets, sat with Dad when he couldn't sleep and just wanted to hear someone read aloud. He asked for Walt Whitman. We both cried the night I read, "I am large, I contain multitudes." Then came the hospital days, the silence, the morphine, the long hours where words were too expensive to waste. He died on a Wednesday, peacefully. The funeral was tasteful, expensive and cold. People came in suits. There were polished eulogies. But I was numb. 2 weeks later, we gathered in our lawyer's office for the reading of the will. Just me, Ethan, our mother, and Mr. Cole, the family attorney. I didn't expect much. Maybe a watch. Maybe a letter. But as Mr. Cole began reading, I realized I wasn't included at all. Not in the real estate.
Not in the bank accounts.
Not even the lake house in Minnesota, where Dad taught me how to fish. Every sentence ended with, "To my son, Ethan Quinn." When it was over, I sat frozen. Ethan leaned back in his chair, eyes dry and jaw set. My mother avoided eye contact. Mr. Cole cleared his throat and said, "That concludes the formal reading." I stood up and said, "That's it." No one answered. I left the room before anyone could see my hand shaking. Before they could offer a half-hearted, "He loved you in his own way." I packed my things and drove back to Portland, back to my life, or whatever pieces were left of it. Nobody asked how I was. Nobody followed up. That was the fall. The moment I realized I'd been erased. And no one in my family had bothered to notice. Portland didn't feel the same when I returned. The streets were the same. The bookstore near Hawthorne still had the crooked poetry sign hanging by one chain. But I had changed. I wasn't just grieving my father. I was grieving the version of me that thought being good would be enough. I found a sublet in a drafty studio above a Thai restaurant. No heat, no dishwasher, just enough light in the afternoons to make the plants I couldn't afford dream. I picked up contract work, proofreading tech manuals, editing grant applications. It was quiet, mechanical work, but it kept the lights on, mostly. Then one afternoon, I saw a flyer taped to the window of a neighborhood co-op. Volunteer tutors needed, seniors and digital literacy. I walked past it, then something pulled me back. The next Tuesday, I was at the Jefferson Community Center, sitting across from Marjorie, 76, trying to help her set up a Gmail account. She squinted at the screen and muttered, "This machine hates me, just like my husband's recliner." I laughed. She didn't. But then she cracked a smile. "You got a good laugh." I trust people who laugh. Every Tuesday after that, we met. She told me stories about her late husband, her son in North Carolina, and the cat that only liked her neighbor. One day, after weeks of awkward typing and forgotten passwords, she called me over. "I sent an email to my son," she said, voice trembling. "He called me last night. We talked for an hour. Said he didn't even know I knew how to use email." Then she looked at me and whispered, "You brought my baby into my living room."
I didn't know what to say.
So I just sat there with her. In that sterile, flickering lit computer lab, something sacred happened. Not loud, not viral, not newsworthy, but it mattered. One woman, one connection, one moment that said, "You still count." That night, I went home and wrote in my journal for the first time in months. This isn't much, but it feels real. And for now, that's enough. Soon, other seniors started showing up. Bob, who kept referring to the mouse as that little rat. Tina, who wanted to set up an Etsy shop for her hand-knit potholders. I became their computer girl. I liked that title more than anything I'd ever been called in my life. No salary, no LinkedIn endorsements. But something in me was waking up. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. It started small, like all honest things do. Just me and 6 folding chairs in a cramped room at the Jefferson Community Center. But word spread fast. Within 2 months, our digital literacy class had doubled, then tripled. We had to move to the library's basement to accommodate the new students, retired teachers, ex-military vets, grandmothers who hadn't held a mouse in 20 years. I built lesson plans from scratch, printed cheat sheets, wrote code for a simple, user-friendly interface that grouped links by categories like health, family, social. Nothing fancy, just tools that made the online world feel a little less like a monster behind a screen. People started calling it Elderbright. I didn't name it. Tina did, said the screen looked brighter when I walked in. The city council took notice. I was awarded a $12,000 micro-grant to develop an app version of the toolkit. We got donations, a part-time staffer, then a small team. We expanded to 5 locations, then 10. We were onboarding 1,200 seniors per month across the metro area. Our email open rate was 78%, higher than some Fortune 500 companies. We partnered with a local public transportation system to offer discounted rides for participants. We even worked with a local bank to teach seniors how to spot phishing scams and protect their savings. One woman cried when she realized she'd avoided a $4,000 scam because of one of our fake or not sessions. I was invited to speak at conferences. Got featured in Oregon Life magazine. A small, black and white portrait of me beside a headline that read, "She helped Grandma Google." I laughed when I saw it. It wasn't glamour, but it was something real, something earned. And still, nothing for my family. No calls. No congratulations. No curiosity. One time I emailed my mother a local news clip of an Elderbright class. Her response? "Oh, I didn't know you were still in Portland." That was it. Ethan, meanwhile, was getting nominated for Businessman of the Year. Every family group text was full of updates about Ethan's vision and Ethan's acquisition in Aspen. I stayed silent in those chats. I don't think anyone noticed. When I visited for Thanksgiving, my first time back since the will, Ethan gave me a half-hearted hug and said, "Still teaching old folks to click buttons?" Real noble work. Then he laughed like it was a compliment. My mother set a fourth plate, but never asked how I was doing. We talked about the weather and cranberry sauce, but not once about Elderbright. In that house, I was still the free spirit, the one with ideas, and not much else. I had helped hundreds of seniors reconnect with loved ones. Some even met their grandkids for the first time through a screen. But to my family, I was still Rachel, the one who never really fit the mold. I smiled. I listened. And I drove back to Portland that night with the radio off. Not in anger, but in quiet understanding. Sometimes your greatest work isn't celebrated by the people who share your last name, and you learn to be okay with that. But what I didn't know was that someone unexpected had noticed, and he was about to walk into my life with a truth I never saw coming. It was a rainy Thursday in March. We had just wrapped up a class at the Northside Senior Center. I was collecting laminated handouts, how to use Zoom without panic, when I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me, are you Rachel Quinn?" I turned around. A man, maybe mid-30s, clean-cut, suit jacket slightly damp at the shoulders. He looked out of place among the cardigans and walkers. "Yes," I answered, cautious. He smiled almost apologetically. "I hope this isn't strange. My name's Mark. I'm actually here picking up my fiancé's grandmother, Dolores." Dolores. I remembered her.
Sassy.
Loved emojis. Called YouTube the Tube. She'd been in my class for weeks. "She talks about you all the time," he continued. But it wasn't until yesterday that I really understood why. He pulled out his phone, swiped to a text thread, showed me a message from Dolores, full of heart emojis, yes, but also a video. A video I had helped her record. A 90-second clip of her talking about her late husband, her garden, and a birthday message to her granddaughter. "I proposed the same night she sent that video," Mark said quietly. "She's the only family my fiancé really has left." And that message, it healed something.
I didn't know what to say.
I looked down at the paper in my hand, wet with condensation, the ink bleeding slightly. The moment felt fragile, big, but unspoken. He tucked his phone away and added, "We've been telling everyone about Elderbright. I thought it was just some city program until I Googled it. That's when I saw your name." I nodded, still unsure if I should smile or cry. Then he said it. "I don't think you realize how many families you've quietly brought back together. You didn't just teach people how to email. You gave them their dignity back." There it was. Words I had never heard from my own family, spoken by someone who had no reason to flatter me. No bloodline. No shared holidays. Just truth.
"Thank you," he said.
"Really?" Before I could respond, Dolores emerged from the hallway holding a floral tote bag and waving like we'd known each other for decades. Mark turned to leave, then paused. "By the way," he said, reaching into his pocket, "I'm also a probate attorney. I came across your name a few weeks ago while reviewing a delayed file from the Cole estate." My heart skipped. Cole estate. That was Mr. Cole, our family lawyer. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked. He pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed at the edges, addressed in my father's handwriting. This was sent separately. It got caught in a mislabeled file. "I've been trying to reach you ever since." I stared at it. It felt unreal, heavy, like it carried the weight of the years I had been silenced. "Go ahead," he said, nodding. "Open it." I opened the envelope slowly, carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Rachel, I know how this looks. And I know you're probably wondering why your name wasn't called. But there was a second part. A quiet part. One I asked to be delivered directly to you. The company, the money, that was Ethan's world. And he earned it. But what I built with land and buildings, you built with people. The lake house is yours. Not the deed, the land. It's in your name. I've set it up through a trust with specific protections. You don't have to go back. But I hope someday you'll visit. I loved you fiercely, even when I didn't always show it the right way. Gentle storms change the land, Rachel. That's why I left it to you."
Love. Dad.
I folded the letter, my hands trembling. Mark just stood there, silent, respectful. It wasn't a fortune. It wasn't a trophy. It was something older. Something sacred. My name had been remembered. In a second letter. In a final gesture that didn't need to be read aloud to the world, just to me. Not because I demanded attention, but because the truth walked in by itself and refused to stay quiet. I didn't call Ethan. Didn't email my mother. Didn't update the family group chat. Instead, I packed a weekend bag, filled a thermos with Earl Grey, and drove to the lake house. I hadn't been there since I was 16. The drive was quieter than I remembered. The turns felt softer. The trees taller. It was as if time had stretched out a hand and waited for me to return. When I reached the gravel driveway, the gate opened with a soft creak. Still the same old swing on the porch. Still the wind chimes Dad insisted helped him think. I stepped inside. The house was clean.
Preserved, almost.
Like someone knew I'd be coming back someday. On the mantel, a faded photo of me and Dad fishing. He's got a goofy grin. I mid-eye roll. That was our language. I walked through each room slowly, letting memories surface gently, like bubbles from a deep lake bed. No tears. Just a quiet settling. In the master bedroom, I found a drawer filled with old letters, my childhood drawings, birthday cards I had forgotten writing. He had kept everything. That night, I lit a fire, sat cross-legged with a blanket, and reread the letter he'd left me. It didn't undo the years of distance. It didn't change the silence. But it held something stronger than apology. It held understanding. The next day, I got a letter in the mail, forwarded from the old P.O. box I hadn't checked in months. It was from my mother, Rachel.
Mark told me everything.
I didn't know about the second letter. I should have asked. I should have listened. The lake house suits you. It always did. I just didn't want to believe he saw you more clearly than I did.
I'm sorry. Love, Mom.
No phone call. No dramatic gesture. Just a note. But it was enough. Later that week, Ethan texted. He left you the land? I didn't know. Then, a minute later, guess he always saw something in you I missed.
I didn't respond.
Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to explain myself anymore. I didn't print the letter from Dad. Didn't frame it.
Didn't post about it.
I just kept it. Folded.
Close.
Because sometimes, healing doesn't look like a scene. It looks like being alone in a place that once held your pain. And feeling none. It wasn't pride. It was peace. Elder Bright kept growing. We launched a new branch in Eugene. I trained 3 new instructors. Tina finally got her Etsy shop online. Dolores started a podcast. I stayed in Portland. But I visited the lake house every season. Not to escape, but to remember that the person I became wasn't invisible. She had always been here, waiting for the quiet to speak. If you've ever felt like your name was erased from your own story, if you've ever watched someone else take the spotlight for something you built quietly behind the scenes, this story was for you. I know what it's like to feel unseen, to do the work no one claps for, to build something meaningful, only to hear silence from the people who were supposed to cheer you on. But here's the truth no one tells you. The right eyes always find you, even if it takes time, even if they come wearing a stranger's coat and carrying a second letter. Recognition doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a smile, a story told in passing, a name remembered in a room you didn't know you entered. And in those moments you realize you were never waiting to be chosen. You were just waiting to choose yourself. So, if you're sitting in the quiet right now, if you're doing good work and no one's watching,
keep going.
Someone will feel it. Someone will heal because of it. And someday, the truth will walk in, uninvited, and sit down beside you. Tell me, where are you watching from? What story are you carrying in silence? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. This channel is for the quiet victories, the late bloomers, the second letters. Thank you for being here. And I promise, the next story might be yours.